Some gods are remembered for wisdom, some are remembered for mercy, but Kartikeya was remembered for the moment the heavens ran out of hope and needed a warrior. In Hindu mythology, Kartikeya, also known as Skanda, Kumara, Subramanya, and in South India closely associated with Murugan, is widely known as a god of war and the son of Shiva. In many traditional accounts, the gods longed for his birth, because only a son of Shiva could defeat the demon Taraka. South Indian traditions also preserve Murugan as a major Tamil deity who later became identified with Skanda. But the real reason his story stays in the heart is not only because he won a war, it is because he was born from urgency shaped by destiny and forced to become strong before he was ever allowed to be young. Long before victory came, there was fear. The worlds were trembling, the gods were restless, and at the center of that fear stood a demon named Taraka, empowered by a boon that made him nearly impossible to defeat. There was only one path left. He could be killed only by a son of Shiva. But Shiva was deep in meditation, withdrawn from the world, untouched by desire, untouched by distraction, untouched by every cry rising from heaven and earth. And so a strange truth took shape. The universe did not merely need another god. It needed a child born for battle. That is what makes Kartikeya's story feel so sharp from the very beginning. He was not born into peace. He was not born into comfort. He was not born simply to be loved. He was born because the world was desperate. Parvati came into the story not only as a goddess but as devotion itself. In one of the best-known tellings, the gods needed Shiva to unite with Parvati so that the child destined to destroy Taraka could be born. In Kalidasa's Kumara Sambhava and related traditions, this divine union becomes part of the cosmic preparation for the war to come. There is something heartbreaking in that, because even before Kartikeya opened his eyes, his life already carried expectation. Before he could speak, a prophecy was speaking for him. Before he could choose who to become, the world had already chosen his purpose. And still, that was not the hardest part, because his birth itself was no ordinary birth. Traditional accounts vary, but Britannica notes that the legends of Skanda's birth differ widely. In one major version, Shiva's seed is received by Agni, the god of fire, and then placed in the Ganges, from which Skanda is born. He is then reared by the Kritikas, the 6 star nurses of the Pleiades, which is why he is called Kartikeya, son of the Kritikas. He is also associated with 6 faces, developed to drink the milk of all 6 nurses. Imagine that child, not born into a quiet cradle, but carried by fire, touched by river, raised among stars, a child of flame, water, and sky. From the beginning, Kartikeya feels less like an ordinary son and more like a force being assembled by the universe itself. And yet the emotional center of his story is not power, it is pressure. Because what kind of childhood belongs to someone born with a battlefield already waiting? He grows quickly in the imagination of myth, not as a boy hidden behind the walls of safety, but as a radiant young warrior. Britannica describes him as the leader of the army of the gods, a figure of enormous strength, often called Kumara, the youth, or the boy. In art and sculpture, he may appear with 1 head or 6, carrying a spear, and associated with the peacock as his mount. That image is unforgettable. A young god, a warrior's spear in his hand, a peacock beneath him, the heavens looking towards someone so young for rescue. And maybe that is where the story becomes human again, because so many people know what it means to be pushed into strength too early, to grow up before they were ready, to become the strong one because everyone else was afraid, to carry the fight no one else could carry. Kartikeya is divine, yes, but he also feels like the soul of anyone who had no choice but to become brave. And then the moment comes, the war that had shadowed his life from the beginning, the reason for his birth, the name that had haunted heaven itself, Taraka. The battle is not memorable only because it is violent. It is memorable because it is destiny finally meeting the child it has been waiting for. He enters not merely as Shiva's son, but as the answer to a prayer older than his own life. He is no longer just the child of prophecy. He is the test of whether hope was right to keep believing, and he wins. In most versions, Skanda's birth was sought precisely so that Taraka could be defeated, and his identity as the war god is inseparable from that victory. Britannica also notes his enormous strength and his place at the head of the divine army. But that is not the twist. The twist is that Kartikeya is not remembered only as a destroyer. He is remembered as victory with discipline, courage with purpose, fire under control. That matters, because war in mythology is not always about rage. Sometimes it is about restoring order. Sometimes it is about standing between chaos and the innocent. Sometimes the sword is not lifted because someone loves violence, but because someone loves the world enough to protect it. That is why Kartikeya does not feel like a god of destruction in the simplest sense. He feels like the god of necessary courage. And in South India, that feeling becomes even more intimate. Britannica notes that Murugan was the chief deity of the ancient Tamils, later identified in part with the North Indian war god Skanda. Murugan's favorite weapon is described as the spear, and he became one of the most beloved deities in Tamil tradition. So the story deepens. He is not only the god who wins wars, he is the god people look to when they need inner victory too. The courage to face fear, the strength to cut through confusion, the discipline to stand upright in the middle of temptation, pain, or doubt. His spear is not only a weapon, it feels like clarity. His peacock is not only a mount, it feels like beauty carrying power. His youth is not weakness. It becomes proof that destiny does not always wait for age before calling someone forward. And this is where Kartikeya becomes healing, because his story says that being young does not mean being unready. Being pressured by life does not mean being abandoned by grace. Being born into struggle does not mean you were born without purpose. Sometimes the battle you never asked for reveals the strength you never knew you had. Sometimes the reason life demanded so much from you was not cruelty. Sometimes it was preparation. Kartikeya stands in myth like a blazing answer to helplessness, a child of divine fire, a youth with a warrior's destiny, a commander born because heaven had run out of time, and a reminder that the soul capable of protecting others is often forged in the most demanding conditions. Maybe that is why he endures, not just because he defeated Taraka, but because he embodies the moment fear stops ruling the story. He is what happens when courage finally arrives. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments which part hit you deepest. And if you know someone fighting a difficult battle in silence, send them this story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more healing myths and powerful legends.